Bruckner lived from 1824 to 1896 in Austria. He grew up in a small village, the son of a schoolmaster, and quickly became organist of the monastery at St. Florian. Although he later lived in Vienna, he never shed the rural provincial manners of his upbringing, which caused him endless agony in the cosmopolitan capital. With a thick country accent, trousers that looked like they'd been sewn by a plumber, and a terribly old-fashioned misogynistic personality, he made few friends and was frequently misunderstood and ridiculed. His rise to fame was very slow, and it was only in the years after his death that his genius was fully appreciated. He was, however, an incredibly important composer, writing 10 symphonies of unparalleled mystical ecstasy. Bruckner's music is unique, with a kind of otherworldly transcendence that places him right at the top of the pantheon of composers. Bruckner grew up studying Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, and Schubert. From these composers, he absorbed traditional formal structures, so his symphonies are all in 4 movements in the expected pattern of fast, slow, scherzo, fast finale. From Beethoven, he learnt how to create tension over long periods of time, but he also worshipped Richard Wagner, his contemporary. On first meeting the composer, he threw himself down on the ground in front of Wagner, exclaiming, "Master, I worship you." Wagner's rich harmony had a deep impact on Bruckner, but he cared little for the drama of the operas, attending them with his eyes closed, oblivious to the words, only interested in the music. He was a masterful organist, respected even in Vienna. In London, he filled the largest concert halls where people queued for hours to hear him. And this is an important clue to understanding his symphonies. Bruckner will often dwell on one orchestral sound, like the brass section alone, for a long time, just as an organist would dwell on a particular registration. He thinks of the orchestra in terms of blocks of sound. He was also obsessive-compulsive, often going on counting binges when he would count all his steps in one day, or all the leaves on a tree. And we can hear that in the music as well, where a sequence will often be repeated at great length. To appreciate his music, we have to make peace with the naivete and give in to his sense of time moving slowly. Eventually, this gives the music a sense of tremendous grandeur. The 5th is the only of Bruckner's symphonies to begin with a slow introduction. Mysterious, plucked notes in the lower strings accompany a gently unfolding string of suspensions in the upper strings, as if we're entering an enormous Gothic cathedral on tiptoes. Suddenly, a massive arpeggio erupts in the whole orchestra. Then a brief hymn tune follows in the brass. Then mysterious music in the strings in the wrong key. Then the hymn tune again. Only now does the music settle down and get on with what we were expecting from the start. But the music seems to be asking a question. Where are we going? The opening few minutes are incredibly disjunct, even bizarre, and it will take the course of the entire symphony to understand them. Bruckner's slow movements are often audiences' favourites. In this second movement, the strings begin in one time signature, while the oboe enters in another, resulting in a disorientating effect. Bruckner often creates a sense of being lost in order to later provide reconciliation, and that comes in the second subject, one of his most majestic and consoling. This is music full of solace, as if we are being comforted. Of course, Bruckner was deeply religious, and no matter what our own thoughts on the matter are, we have to understand his music as an expression of deep piety. The feeling of being lost represents mankind without God, and the sense of consolation and relief is man's acceptance of God's infinite love. The third movement begins with the very same notes as the second, except sped up into an Austrian folk dance, a Ländler. In his scherzos, Bruckner gives us a sense of relief from the massive fundamental questions of the outer movements. This is music from Earth, from his village dance hall, and the 5th scherzo is no exception. The finale begins with the same tiptoeing music as the first. There's a sense of travelling back in time. We also hear a brief recap of the second movement, a trick Bruckner had learnt from Beethoven's 9th Symphony. The questioning music returns, before being interrupted cheekily by a clarinet. next begins a massive fugue. I've talked about fugue before. It's a kind of musical puzzle where one little melody is piled on top of itself, a little bit like a round, but much more complicated. It's a very important and prestigious genre in classical music. We all spend years learning to write fugues at school. And because J.S. Bach was the master of fugue, we tend to associate fugue with God, because Bach is as close to God as a human being has ever come. By beginning a fugue, by writing the most complex music possible, Bruckner is demonstrating his devotion to God. It's important to understand that Bruckner's purpose in writing such difficult music was worship. He was offering the very best of himself to his creator. Next comes another hymn tune in the brass, then another massive fugue before the aha moment. The questioning music from the first movement returns, right before the theme of the first fugue and the hymn are combined. Now we understand what the disjunct opening of the first movement meant, and we understand what the questioning music meant. They were both pointing towards this moment of ultimate synthesis, where Bruckner demonstrates his massive compositional skill by combining several disjunct threads together. You could describe the whole symphony as a kind of metaphor along the lines of hard work and faith leads to fulfillment and everlasting joy. The massiveness of Bruckner's music puts our place in the cosmos into perspective. In many ways, his music is a celebration of the beauty of nature and all creation. And ironically, seeing our place in that infinite scale affords us an out-of-body spiritual experience of a magnitude that little, if any other music can offer. As I said before, it's also music about consolation, love, tenderness, and humanity. It's music about human achievement. Just like a great cathedral, a Bruckner symphony stands as a testament to what mankind is capable of. Ultimately, for me, Bruckner's music provides a space in which to ponder the greatest existential questions. It's a space that no other composer builds in quite the same way. Yes, the journey is long, but the payoff is enormous, and you leave the concert hall with the feeling of having traveled millions of miles in a spaceship, stunned by the enormity of the universe. So, I invite you to come on this extraordinary journey with us as we live through Bruckner's Fifth Symphony.